Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Briefing Room. I'm Devin Dwyer. Happy Tuesday. Great to have you with us. Hope you had a great holiday weekend. And again, a salute to all those who have served and sacrificed on this first day after the Memorial Day holiday. Big news to get to today on the abortion front up at the Supreme Court. The court handed down a complicated decision related to Indiana's abortion law. We'll get into that coming up. We also caught up earlier today with presidential candidate John DELANEY on the Democratic side to talk to him about all things 2020. And we end today with a look at something interesting in the world of UFOs, some new guidance from the Pentagon on what Navy pilots should do to report unidentified flying objects. So stay tuned for that conversation. But we do begin today up at the Supreme Court with a landmark decision, really, on abortion rights in this country amidst this heated debate that's underway right now. The Supreme Court, in a split decision, decided that Indiana, in a 2016 law, cannot ban selective abortions. They didn't weigh in on the merits. They said there's not enough case law there yet. They let a lower court ruling stand on that front. But they did say that Indiana could move forward with restrictions on how fetal remains are handled after an abortion is performed, saying those remains must be buried and cremated. We have team coverage today on this front. Melissa Murray is an NYU constitutional law professor. She joins us now. Also, Jennifer Davlin with the ACLU is here. And we also have Amira Hazenbush. She's a LGBT lawyer who has studied bathroom bills across the country. There was some action today on transgender rights. But I want to go right to Melissa Murray to start. Melissa, great to see you. You have paid very close attention to these reproductive cases before the court. Help us understand the significance of what they did today.
So this was clearly an avoidance issue for the court. There's been a lot of interest in what the court will do around abortion because there have been so many recent laws that have been more and more extreme in the regulation of abortion. So this was a very closely watched and highly anticipated case. And what the court did here was refuse to hear an appeal of part of the law, letting the Seventh Circuit's decision on the law stand on one part, but then actually reversing another part of that Seventh Circuit decision. And the part that they reversed was a part dealing with the disposal of fetal remains. So the Indiana law required abortion clinics to dispose of fetal remains in the same way that you would dispose of human remains. And again, part of this is animated by an interest in a culture of life, but also part of it, I think, is quite clearly engineered to make the process of disposal a cost center that the abortion clinics will have to incorporate into the cost of providing abortion care. So again, this is a measure that has an interest in preserving and promoting life, but also in making abortion more expensive and therefore less accessible to women who will either take on the cost themselves or the clinic itself will bear the cost and perhaps be unable to continue providing care. So in reversing and upholding that part of the law, the court has sort of continued its very piecemeal effort to chip away at abortion rights and to make, again, it easier for the states to make abortion inaccessible without actually overruling Roe versus Wade.
And we should say that part of the opinion today was 7-2. Justices Sotomayor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg would have let a lower court decision blocking the fetal remains clause to stand. But Jennifer Davlin, you've taken a close look at how prohibitive this could be, picking up where Melissa left off. You see a chilling effect in this part of the law that's going to go into effect today.
Yes, we're certainly disappointed that the court let another abortion restriction stand. Laws like Indiana's are part of a nationwide strategy to stigmatize abortion and to push abortion out of reach. You know, Indiana's laws were just two of the more than 400 restrictions on abortion that states have passed since the 2010 elections. And as you know, since President Trump put Justice Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, 6 states have passed bans on abortions. And just today, we learned that after years and years of trying, Missouri may actually shut down the last abortion clinic in the state.
So a lot of those state restrictions are headed forward. But Melissa Murray, it was interesting today, again, just to highlight the other part of this complicated case, the justices allowed to stand a lower court ruling that does block Indiana's ban on selective abortions. Those are abortions on the basis of sex, race, disability. That part remains invalid. But it was interesting that Justice Clarence Thomas did lay out in a lengthy concurring opinion what appeared to me to be some sort of a roadmap, a signal to conservatives, abortion opponents, on how they might bring this before the court again.
There's certainly a laying of breadcrumbs by Justice Thomas. So this is not the last that we'll see of this issue. The court has only managed to sidestep the broader question of whether Roe versus Wade will continue to be a legitimate precedent. Again, I've said before that you don't actually have to overrule Roe versus Wade to make the abortion right completely inaccessible to American women. All you have to do is make the right harder to exercise and more inaccessible. And that's what the court has basically done by upholding the fetal remains component of this law. They've made it more costly, and they've made it so that clinics will either have to pass these costs along to their patients or absorb them themselves, making it harder for clinics to stay in business.
So with this action today, the Supreme Court not hearing oral arguments on this case, but issuing an opinion, they keep abortion off the docket for the next term for now. They also kept off the docket an issue of transgender rights in this country, a case of high school students out of Pennsylvania that were challenging the Boyertown School Board's decision to allow transgender students use the bathrooms and locker room facilities of their gender identity. An interesting case that's been closely watched there, and a win today. Amira Hazenbush, for transgender students in this country. Break that down for us.
Yeah, so the court has previously ruled on issues related to bathrooms in a variety of contexts. This one was specific to restrooms in the school environment. And this one was a little bit unique because rather than it being the transgender student fighting for the right to use the restroom that was in conformance with their gender identity, this was cisgender students or non-transgender students specifically asking the court to prevent transgender students from using those restrooms. They were trying to claim that it was a violation of their privacy to have to use restrooms together with transgender students, and the court denied cert on this. So essentially left in place the ruling from the Third Circuit that said that transgender students have to be able to use the restrooms in accordance with their gender identity, in accordance with the school's policy, and that cisgender students are not having their privacy rights violated by those rules.
Yeah, and the Third Circuit said in a 3-0 decision a couple months ago that there was really no difference for students if transgender students could use those bathrooms. But Melissa Murray, transgender issues front and center also before this court. We also are awaiting a decision on that transgender ban in the military.
Yes, these are very hotly and deeply contested issues. And again, a skittish court that may not be willing to take on these questions right now when they're trying to recover from what was a very bruising confirmation battle where the court saw a true dip in its legitimacy and standing among the public.
And Jennifer, before we wrap up our block here today, give us the ACLU's view on the lay of the land. Your organization is party to a number of these abortion cases around the country, challenging state laws. What's next in front of the court, do you think, on abortion?
Yeah, the Supreme Court already has 3 other cases just waiting to see if the court will want to pick them up or whether, as Professor Murray says, they'll want to continue to sidestep them. And there are dozens more working their way through the court. But Professor Murray is exactly right that we don't have to wait for the Supreme Court to issue a real blockbuster decision on Roe versus Wade. What we know is that either through outright bans or by clinic shutdown laws or simply by piling restriction on top of restriction on top of restriction, states can make abortion as good as illegal for many, many people in this country without having to have the headline, Roe is overturned.
All right, something we're all going to be watching very closely as we head into the new Supreme Court term. Jennifer Davlin with the ACLU, thank you so much. Melissa Murray, great to see you as always from NYU Law School. And great to see Amira Hazenbush as well, an LGBT lawyer. Thank you all very much for the conversation. To Oklahoma now, and the first major legal challenge against one of America's big pharmaceutical companies in the opioid epidemic in this country. 130 people die per day from that epidemic, and the state of Oklahoma today is taking aim at one of those big drug makers, Johnson & Johnson, accusing them of being a kingpin in this crisis for deceptive marketing of painkillers and downplaying the risks. The state settled with 2 other companies just a few weeks ago, Purdue Pharma and Teva Pharmaceuticals. Johnson & Johnson, of course, denies wrongdoing, but a landmark move today as this first legal challenge moves forward. As that plays out, I want to bring in Dan Cross. He's the CEO and co-founder of Able Recovery in Oklahoma City for a little bit more on how this is playing out in Oklahoma. Dan, it's great to see you. What's the situation on the ground there right now as this trial gets underway?
Well, Oklahoma has been hard hit by the opioid epidemic, and as until about 2012, we led the nation basically from 2008 to 2012 in the abuse of prescription painkillers. We had like 8.13% of the population 12 and over that were abusing opioid prescriptions. And so that was like almost double what the rest of the nation was seeing. So, to Oklahoma's credit, we took several initiatives that we were early on, like prescription monitoring program, the restricting prescription medications. Right now, our problem is that people that need those medications are having trouble getting them, and cracking down on pill mill doctors. Perhaps one of the most, and that right there actually produced the result of, in 2012, we started seeing a decline in the number of prescriptions that were being written for Oklahomans. We saw a 30% decline in the number of prescriptions from 2012. Most states didn't start seeing that until like the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that, Dan, because you've talked about doctors cracking down on prescriptions for opioids, some of the resources the state has put there towards fighting this. But do you hold the drug companies themselves responsible, and to what extent should they be held liable?
Yeah, and I gotta be very careful here. I have not studied the Johnson & Johnson case, and I'm not an attorney, but I would say that some of the other cases, what I've read is that they knowingly shipped more prescriptions to certain counties than they had people in those counties. So I think they knew what was going on. In some cases, I don't know about Johnson & Johnson, but in some cases they were giving doctors kickbacks and things like that. So yes, there are some reasons in general to say, yes, the drug companies are responsible because they knowingly did this. They also did things like they said that if taken as prescribed, according to this regimen, you can't get addicted. Well, that's not true.
Yeah,
So,
and you're right. Your organization works on the front lines with folks trying to recover from the addiction.
Sure.
Specifically, you were telling one of our producers that you focus on fentanyl, which is one of the products that Johnson & Johnson makes. They're in court today over that, the fentanyl patch. How much of a role is fentanyl playing in this crisis?
Well, yeah, back in 2008, I warned everybody that our supply side approach to the public policy was going to be a train wreck, because if we didn't do something about treatment and prevention, well, I predicted that there would be a massive shift to heroin addiction, and that did take place. What I couldn't predict was the onset of fentanyl, and what that does is it turns the conversion to heroin into a Russian roulette, because you never know whether you're getting 1 grain or 2 grains or 3 grains. 1 grain might get you really, really high. 2 grains may put you in an overdose situation. 3 grains might certainly kill you. And that's just mixed up in a garage somewhere, in a back room of somebody's home. It's not pharmaceutical grade circumstances. So,
certainly, all of those drugs is creating a very, very difficult situation. But as you say, at least on the prescription side,
fentanyl is so extremely powerful, and there are all kinds of anecdotes about how it permeates through the skin. Some say it permeates through the latex gloves. I don't know what the truth is. But the point is it is extremely lethal. And if you get the carfentanil, that's like just off the scale. And so,
and that's what that jury the judge in this trial in Oklahoma with the Johnson & Johnson case will be looking at. No doubt we're out of time there, but Dan Cross, thank you so much with Able Recovery in Oklahoma City. Appreciate your perspective and the work that you do there with those who are addicted. Back here in Washington now, President Trump returned from a Memorial Day weekend trip overseas, arriving just a short time ago back at the White House with the First Lady. They traveled back from Tokyo, Japan, where they received a state visit, met the new Japanese emperor as the first foreign leader to do so, and talking and meeting with Japanese officials about the threat from North Korea. The president even said at a press conference the other day that he isn't bothered by the missiles that are fired off by Kim Jong-un. A number of Democrats running to replace President Trump in the last couple of days have taken issue with that, including former Maryland Congressman John DELANEY, who stopped by the briefing room here just a short time ago.
Well, it would bother me if they fire those projectiles. I want to denuclearize North Korea. I was supportive of the administration having discussions with North Korea. I think you have to have dialogue with people, but you also have to understand the goals. What I worry about with this president is in some effort to kind of score a victory, he will agree to something that hurts the long-term interest of the United States of America. Foreign policy, in many ways, is the most important job of the President of the United States.
But primary voters don't often vote on foreign policy. You may have the best foreign policy views, but you know better than anybody that it has not traditionally been top of the list.
Which is why
Are you convinced that it's different this year?
Well, listen, I think we need a responsible leader. Right? I think that's the theme of our country right now. We need responsible leaders who will do the right thing, lead with dignity and respect, unify our country, and put forth real solutions.
I also think I have the best of voters' minds that they
I think responsibility is. You know, I think they're looking at what's going on in the White House now, and they're realizing we have an irresponsible president. He's indecent, he's immoral, and we got to turn the page on that. But I also have the best climate plan. I also have the best immigration plan, in my opinion. I think I have the best health care plan. I think I have the best infrastructure plan. I think I have the best plan for dealing with technological innovation.
Let's talk about that plan. Sure. You did just unveil your climate plan, a $4 trillion plan. One of the features of it is this cap and dividend mechanism, which is unique to your campaign. It would give all Americans, in your view, a dividend from the cap tax.
For the price we put on carbon.
Exactly. A lot of liberals, though, a lot of progressives in the climate sphere say this is way too moderate.
No.
They want the Green New Deal. I mean, isn't this a tough sell in this competitive primary with a lot in your party on the left animated by Green New Deal?
The Citizens Climate Lobby, which is one of the most successful grassroots climate groups in the country, they gave me the Legislator of the Year award for introducing this exact bill in the Congress on a bipartisan basis. I think what people who really care about climate understand is we have to do something right away. And I believe I can get this massive carbon fee and dividend bill put in place as law in my first year as president. It'll cut greenhouse gas emissions by 90%, and I can do it with a coalition of all the Democrats in the Congress and Republicans who live in coastal states, because they have to deal with this issue. And that's how I was able to get it introduced on a bipartisan basis in the Congress. So what matters on climate is getting something big done right away.
And as part of your argument, Congressman, that it pays for itself, that there's not going to be a tax add-on here, that there's because so many of these grand plans, Jay Inslee, we talked to last week, had a very big climate plan. Obviously, the Green New Deal, all of those have sort of extreme pay-fors. Right. But your argument is that this is more pragmatic.
Well, first of all, I don't think you can solve climate change on the backs of hardworking Americans. Right? So many Americans are struggling right now. We can put forth plans, like many of my competitors are doing, that just crushes working families. We have to have a totally different approach. That's why the path that I'm choosing, I think, is most successful, which is why it can get done. My plan is also a huge bet on American innovation.
When is your breakout moment? Why are you lagging behind in so many of the polls? Not to be a downer. It is early in the campaign,
totally
we should say. But as you look forward, we've got the first debates coming up. You know, when are you going to pop?
So, look, I'm playing the long game. My whole life is the story of just working harder than everyone else and having better ideas. I grew up in a blue-collar family. My parents didn't go to college. I became an entrepreneur. I was the youngest CEO in the history of the New York Stock Exchange. I created thousands of jobs. I can go toe-to-toe with this president on business and the economy any day. I served in the Congress of the United States. I think working hard and new ideas really matter.
You spent the most time than any candidate in Iowa.
I've been to all 99 counties.
You've been to 99 counties in Iowa before
and all 10
anybody
in New
else.
Hampshire. Yeah.
What have you learned that you didn't know before about Iowans, about New Hampshireans? I mean, what has surprised you? What has kind of captivated your imagination?
Well, what has made me so optimistic about our future is that most Americans remain optimistic, right? But they want us to solve problems. They're just tired of all this partisanship. Because when they see partisanship, what they see is people who are not putting them first. And that's what you go around Iowa, you go to these 99 counties, so many small towns have lost population, they've lost jobs, the main employers have closed, there's a talent drain, there's an opportunity drain. They want someone who will put their needs first. And stop with all this partisanship. So someone like myself who's a problem solver is what most Americans are looking for. My campaign in some ways is about reestablishing the center, right? Because I think we've allowed, in many ways, the loudest voices in the room on each side of the aisle to hold the rest of the country hostage.
Our thanks again to John DELANEY of Maryland, running for president, one of the 23, as we closely watch later next month that first debate taking place down in Miami. Well, finally today, a story that's, I guess, out of this world. In the wake of an uptick of reports of unidentified flying objects by Navy pilots, the Navy has put out new guidance about how those sightings are to be reported. The Navy says that those reports of unidentified objects should be filed with the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Center, a shadowy arm of the Pentagon. And in a statement, they said for safety and security concerns, the Navy and the U.S. Air Force take these reports very seriously and investigate each and every report. As part of this effort, the Navy has updated and formalized the process by which reports of any such suspected incursions can be made to the cognizant authorities. So, what are they seeing and what might it be telling us? Let's bring in now an expert in extraterrestrial life, Seth Shostak with the SETI Institute, that Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. He's a senior astronomer there. Seth, it's great to see you. I want to get your take on this new Navy guidance and what you think these pilots, these F-18 pilots, might be seeing along the East Coast. What do we know?
Well, Devin, you said it's an out-of-this-world story, but of course it's an in-this-world story. The aliens, once again, find us interesting enough to buzz the skies, but, you know, they're usually only seen by the military, as if they're somehow interested in our military. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If I could go back to the Roman Empire, I don't think I'd spend all my time looking at the legions or anything like that. But in any case, yes. It's not a bad idea to have the Navy pilots feel that they can report stuff that they've seen. After all, it could be Chinese or Russian or something like that.
It could be a spinning flying saucer. We're seeing some of the footage here on the from the Navy and the History Channel of some of the pilot footage of what they have been seeing. Some reports that this may be attributed to new radar systems on the F-18. Based on what you've seen from this evidence that's come out, how do you know, or how can we tell this might just not be a radar issue? They aren't apparently seeing this with their naked eyes.
Yes. Well, I think that's a telling point. Radar is not really perfect in the sense that just because you get a radar echo doesn't mean there's actually something physical flying through your airspace. I mean, the changes in the atmosphere, different layers in the air of the Earth also produce radar reflections, as do, for example, clouds. You see them every night on the weather report. So yeah, it's kind of coincidental that they introduce new radar and suddenly they see more UFOs.
And since we have you, Seth, where are we in this search for extraterrestrial intelligence? What's the leading edge of the work that you're doing right now people might not be aware of?
Yeah, well, we are looking for the aliens, but not here on Earth. I don't think they're visiting, but you could prove me wrong maybe someday. but we are using, big antennas and also ordinary telescopes trying to look for signals that might be being sent by aliens that are, light years away on a planet around somebody else's star, not nearby, not off the coast of Virginia or Florida. And we haven't found them yet, but I remain optimistic because the equipment keeps getting faster and better. So I think that within our lifetimes, we will actually pick up something that'll tell us somebody's out there.
All right, you heard it here first from Seth Shostak with SETI Institute, a nonprofit organization that does work with NASA and the National Science Foundation in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Senior astronomer Seth Shostak, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining all of us here in the briefing room on this Tuesday. Great to have you with us. We're here every day, 3:30 Eastern Time on ABC News Live, replayed at 5:30. You can download us on the ABC News app and find us there 24/7, along with the latest reporting on all the stories we've talked about today. I'm Devin Dwyer in Washington. Hope to see you back here tomorrow.